Today, I'm going to be preparing a fierce warrior to take on carnivorous trees in Oathsworn into the Deepwood. My name's Angela, and welcome to Hobby Night. You guys know me. I'm a huge fan of adventure, campaign-driven board games. So when Shadowborn Games reached out to me and was like, hey, we'd like to send you Oathsworn and see what you think of it, I was like, yes, please send it my way. Because this thing looks super cool. Not only does it have a ton of miniatures, as you can see, that come in a lot of very big boxes, it also has terrain, which I thought was really cool. So like we get figures, we get terrain, and then all of the miniatures for the heroes are modular, which I've never seen a board game do before. And I think this is a really cool feature. And it even ties into the mechanics of the game, which I think is even more brilliant. But we are going to be working today on one of the characters that I'm going to be using in my own personal Oathsworn campaign, and that is the Warbear. That's right, we're going to be painting a big fluffy bear, but she is wearing armor and she has a big axe. But I don't want to just paint up one of her weapons, I want to paint up multiple of them. So I also picked out one other weapon choice, and we're going to be painting up both today. We'll showcase both on her, and I just think this is super, super cool. So without further ado, let's get to painting. I want to go with an icy blue color scheme for this model. So to get us started, we're going to prime everything up using Gray Seer, which has a nice blue undertone. Once I'm happy with that, we're going to bring her down to the hobby desk and start with a grisaille technique on the entire model, or more commonly called slap chop when referring to miniatures. Now, this is basically going to establish some nice shadows, midtones, and highlights for me before I even put any additional contrast paint on the figure. And to start, I want to stick with the blue color scheme. So we're going to go with Drakenhof Nightshade, a really lovely dark blue wash. We're going to apply this liberally to the entire model. Once that has dried thoroughly, we're going to move into some dry brushing to bring out some midtones and highlights. And the first color I want to start with dry brushing is called Gravestone Blue. This is one from the Two Thin Coats line from Duncan Rhodes, and I really like it because it's a very soft, subtle blue-gray color tone. And this is perfect because I'm going to emphasize this on the armor, and we're not going to do as much highlighting when we get to that armor. But with the fur, we're going to come back in with a third highlight color, specifically White Star. This is a really beautiful, bright white color tone, and we're going to apply this to all the fur, to the leathers, a little bit to the armor, but only very subtly, just to bring out some minor highlights. We're actually going to come back in with some traditional layering using the same white color tone, focusing on her fur, because I really want the polar bear to look like a polar bear. I want that fur to be bright white and beautiful in contrast to everything else that I'm doing, so we get this really beautiful icy vibe to everything. And I really love how this turns out, and now we can start applying some other colors. I am so happy with how she is looking. The fur stands out beautifully and everything else has a very just lovely highlight, midtone, and shade. So let's actually put some colors on these. Now I do want to go with a little bit of warmth when it comes to the leathers. So for that, I'm going to go with Dark Oath Flesh. This is one of my favorite leather tones from Contrast line. It works perfectly, has a very subtle red undertone, and I think it actually blends with the blue grays that I've put as my base perfectly. Once I'm happy with all the leather straps on her chest, on her armor, anything on her weapons, we're gonna move on to that cloak that she has on her waist. This I'm going to be doing up with Eldari Emerald. I really debated what I was going to do. I debated doing maybe more of a red, maybe a blue, maybe even a purple, but ultimately decided on green because while I want her to feel wintry, I didn't want her to feel Christmassy specifically. And I think this is a beautiful, beautiful balance of feeling sort of wintry without being Christmassy, but maybe still giving you a little bit of those vibes because I'm in the season. I'm very excited about this. So once we have that down, we can actually start moving on to the armor, and this is where we're gonna start having some fun. Hey guys, just jumping into the video to remind you to hit that subscribe button and bell icon for notifications so you never miss future content on the channel. And if you're into the spicier side of the hobby, you can find a link to my Only Fanatics down in the link tree below in the description. Now, let's go ahead and get back to the video. Let's work on the armor because my whole idea and the reason that I picked the polar bear was because I wanted to go with this icy vibe and I wanted the armor to look like black ice because what's scary about winter? Black ice on the streets. So in order to achieve this, I found fairy dust as part of my Army Painter collection of paints, and this is an iridescent white color tone. When thinned and glazed over top of the blue-gray color that I've already put on the armor, it creates a very icy, iridescent, almost black ice looking feel. At least that's how I feel about it, and I love the look of this. But as I'm applying this color to the axe, as well as some of the other armor pieces, I'm noticing it's starting to blend in a little bit too much with itself. So there's a couple of like studs, as well as a couple other elements on the model that I think should be in a different color tone, but still metallic. So we're going to go with natural steel for this. This is gonna go on a lot of the pieces on her chest, those studs on her armor, as well as the claws as her secondary weapons. Because while I did like them kind of looking icy like the armor, it again was just blending in way too much and it needed to stand out a bit differently. So the steel color tone, which still has a little bit of a blue undertone, worked perfectly. I'm really happy with how things are turning out, but I'm looking at the axe head and I'm not satisfied. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna come back in with Dragonhof Nightshade one more time and apply this to the entirety of the axe head. This does wonders and I'm really liking where we're going with this. But now I wanna apply an overall Nuln Oil wash to pretty much everything I've already painted, with the exception of the fur, as well as the loincloth around her waist. Those I wanna keep a little bit brighter and keep a little truer to their original color, but everything else needs this Nuln Oil wash. And I love what this does to the armor. It finishes it off really nicely and really starts to make it look like black ice, or at least in my opinion. It also has helped the axe head a lot, but there's still something missing. So I ultimately come back in with filigree silver and apply that to the sharp edge of the axe. This enhances it exactly how I wanted it to, and now I feel like the axe is finished. But before we can move on to the base, I realized I almost forgot to paint the inside of the bear's mouth. She does have a big open screaming maw, and of course we need to apply some Sigfold Burgundy inside there to just round it off, make everything feel complete before we can move on to the base. We're down to just the base, and the first thing that we need to take care of are her toenails, because I realized that she's got these little claws and I want them to be painted up using Black Templar. With that complete, we can actually start bringing out some of the other details that are on this really nicely sculpted base that we came with the Oathsworn miniatures. And you see that tree root that's there? We're gonna go with two different brown tones on this. One mid-tone brown and then a lighter brown as a highlight. The lighter brown will be dry brushed on, and I think this works perfectly. You can of course use whatever browns you want that might be appropriate to what you're using on the terrain, because that's what I tried to match, because we have been working on painting the terrain and it's coming along beautifully. Once that is down, there's a little pustule sort of growth on that root. We're going to paint that up using a bright yellow. Then we're going to move on to the dirt using Gargak Sewer to apply that to everything that is on the ground. Then I was noticing that the yellow of the pustule was standing out maybe a little bit too brightly, so I came back in with a Seraphim Sepia wash to sort of knock that color back a little bit. And I really like how this has blended it in with the root itself. The last thing that we need to take care of are the stones on the ground. We're gonna come back in with two gray color tones, one mid-tone gray and one lighter gray, to apply as a highlight afterwards. Then, with that complete, we can attach the model and now show you the final result. And here she is, my glorious Warbear. And every time I look at that armor, I'm just so pleased, because I had a vision in my head when I saw her. I was like, ice armor, ice armor, ice armor. And I couldn't get it out of my mind. And I think I actually achieved ice armor in a way that I wasn't actually expecting to achieve it. Originally, I was thinking to do contrast with it, but I'm really happy I played around with the fairy dust, because I think it's just a really, really cool iridescent paint. And I love it, especially because you can mix it in with other paints and make them inherently iridescent, or do what I did and glaze it over top something that you've already painted. Regardless, it's cool. And what's also cool is the fact that Shadowborn Games sent me the all-in package for the Kickstarter. Thank you guys so much for that. It has been amazing, and I'm looking forward to playing the game. We've been prepping so much of the terrain, as well as a couple of the characters that we want to run in our first campaign. So I'm really looking forward to sharing that more with you guys on Instagram. If you yourself are interested in gigantic campaign-driven RPG-like board games, then I'd also encourage you to check out Oathsworn Into the Deepwood. It just has a lot of options. If you aren't into the miniatures, you don't even have to add those on. It does come with standees, which are perfectly acceptable to play the game with, but let's be honest, if you're watching this channel, you're probably a miniature fan, and you may want to get all that plastic goodness. And I personally think they did really well with those sculpts. And again, I am just blown away by the modularity of the hero characters and being able to switch out the weapons appropriate to whatever they're currently running in your campaign. That just is such a cool idea. I really hope other board games sort of take inspiration from that and maybe bring it into their games, because I just think it's a really nice element to especially these RPG campaigns. But overall, I'm just very, very happy with it. Before I head out, I do want to give a final thank you, not only to my patron members, but also my YouTube members, specifically Peter, because you're the first one. You took the plunge. Thank you, sir. And to all my patrons, thank you guys as well for supporting me, helping keep this content going and the channel running. Without you guys doing that, we just would not be here. So thank you very, very much. I have been Angela, and I hope you have a wonderful hobby night.